Hi, my name is Neil Blevins, and this is a tutorial on how to use the soulburnAssetLoader, which is a new script that I recently put on my website. soulburnAssetLoader, or SAL for short, at its core is basically a way to quickly merge environments, materials, and models into your scene. And the reason I did this, I've been looking a lot at a lot of the concept guys have been using programs like Keyshot to do their work. And Keyshot is basically a combination of an asset loader and a real-time rendering environment. And it's a very cool program, but one of the disadvantages of it is after you get your material on there and you want to do something a little more complex, like maybe add dirt or add rust, it really has no capability to do that kind of thing, which is why a lot of the concept guys will take the render they get and then they'll bring it into Photoshop, and then in 2D they'll paint stuff like dirt or markings and that kind of thing after the fact. So looking at it, I was thinking to myself, well, really, if all this is something that loads assets and something that renders in real time, I already have V-Ray, which has V-Ray RT, and the rest is actually just a matter of setting up a script that allows you to really, really quickly load things into your scene and swap materials out and swap environments out. Because the workflow is the key to Keyshot, is that it's very quickly to change and experiment, whereas the way you do it inside of Max normally is a little more clunky. So anyway, that's what got me to write this piece of software, and I'm going to be putting it up on my website. And so if you want an overview of how it works and how to use it, this is the place to be. So here we go. So first, let's start with installation. Go to neilblevins.com, then go to CG Tools, and let's install SAL first. So go to the Soulburn scripts for Macs. And then down here, download the most recent pack, pack 80 or above, and it will have in it SAL, just as well as all the other scripts that are inside of my pack. So download the version appropriate for your version of Max and install it. Then go back to CG Tools, and now there's an Assets area here. There's Environments, Materials, and Models. So click on there, and you see the various asset packs. There are 4 of them. So there's 3 free packs. There's a free environment pack, a free material pack, and then a free model pack. And then there's also a pay pack, which I'm selling for $10, which is a bunch of more advanced hard surface models. But let's start with the free pack. So just go and click on all 3 of these guys, and it gives you instructions on what to do with them, the required plugins, etc. And then down at the very bottom is the download. So download the pack to your hard drive, and then create somewhere in your hard drive a folder called Assets. And in the Assets folder, put 3 subdirectories: Environments, Materials, and Models, and then dump the contents of the various zip files that you downloaded from the Assets area into these directories. So for example, if you go into Environments here, you see in the Environments there's a whole lot of Max files and a bunch of images showing what the Max file is, and then icons. And the same with materials, and the same with models. Now back inside of Max, make yourself an icon for SAL now that you've installed the scripts. And when you first load it up, you'll notice that there are no icons here. And that is because you haven't pointed it yet to the location of where all of your assets are. So let's go down to Options, and under Environment, you can either manually type in where your environment path is, or you can choose it by hitting the F button. So I'll just manually type it here. And there you go. So what it does is it looks and it finds all the assets in that directory and then brings up icons for each. And then I will do exactly the same thing here for materials. And here, let me just fix that. And then I'll do the same thing for models. Hold on, yep. Okay. So once you've set up these 3 guys here, it'll now load the various options, and recurse subdirectories is on, and that means that if there are any subdirectories under environments or materials, it'll also find Max files inside of there. The ignore flag, what that is in case you want to put a max file in one of these three subdirectories that you don't want SAL to see, just put the word ignore at the front of it, and then it'll ignore it and it won't try to load those max files into as icons. Or you can change this to anything you want. And get new assets just brings up a web browser, which lets you get more assets from my website. So here we go. We've now got it set up and it's ready to use. So first let's talk about using environments. So these environments work just as well in V-Ray or V-Ray RT, although I'll be using V-Ray RT just for demonstration purposes. So I have my model, and here's my V-Ray RT window, and if I move around in here, it updates automatically. And now under here, under environments, I have a number of preset environments. Like for example, this guy here is a neutral rig, which provides basically whatever, if it's a 50% gray color, it's going to be a 50% gray result inside of this rig. And then I can move around and look around in real time. And then let's say, okay, well, actually I don't want that one. Instead, what I'd really like is the hard surface rig. I can just click this, and now it'll do a different render using a different set of lights. And this one is something where there is no background, but it is got a key light and a little bit of blue fill, which is sort of the standard lighting I use for all of my hard surface models. And you can add your own in here, so any ones you want. If you have a desert environment or a forest or whatever else, you can very easily drop your own in here and then flip through them really quickly to see which one looks the best. And I'll show you at the end of this how to go about customizing it so you add your own different assets in here. But this is really helpful to just quickly see in different environments what this looks like. Like for example, maybe you have a more complex environment that's going to be your final render, and then you're like, oh, but is that color really right? Then you quickly jump over here one of the neutral rigs, and that'll tell you whether your color is actually looks good in a neutral rig, and then you can immediately swap back to your other one. Also to note, every time you click one of these environments, what it's actually doing is it's merging lights into your scene, and when you click another one, it deletes those lights and puts in a brand new set of lights. So if you make any modifications to your lights, keep in mind that those modifications will disappear the moment you load a new set in, because it's replacing the old lights. So now let's talk about materials a bit. And one thing to note is you have these categories up here. So for example, if you choose glass, it will show you only the glass materials. Or if metal, it'll show you only the metal materials. So this is a good way of limiting your list to something smaller if you just want to only deal with certain kinds of materials, or all if you want to see all the materials that you have installed. So down at the bottom here, these are test materials, which are pretty straightforward ones. And for example, here's a mirror one. So if I click on this, it'll automatically apply that material to whatever you have selected. And then if you render, you'll see that it has applied a mirror material, or this is a 50% gray material. So these are just simple test ones. There's a white and there's a black, and there's a mapping one to check mapping on surfaces. And then on top of that, then there's also the more advanced materials over here, things like metal and glass and rusty metal and concrete and painted surfaces and whatnot. So for example, here's some brass. And what the brass does is it not only makes it metallic and gives it a tint, but it also adds a little bit of dirt in there by using occlusion, and then putting dirt in the occluded areas, and everything else is nice and shiny, which you can see a little of over in the corners here. So there's sort of two ways of two modes in here. One is the one I just showed you, which is it applies it to the object. If you go under options down here, under materials, there is apply material to selected objects, and then also copy material to active material slot. And you can choose either have these both active or only one of them active. The default is just have it apply to whatever the selected object is, but if you want a copy of the material when you click it to also show up inside your material editor, you can turn that on as well, in case you want to use an old school technique for assigning it to various objects and whatnot. Let me talk just a little bit more about the two packs I have available for materials. There's a free one and then the hard surface one. So if we go to the free one, here's the instructions, and here's what the materials are. So first I have the dirty, rusted, decaled, painted, worn metal material that I posted a number of months ago on my website in the tutorial section. So you can load that. This is a series of masks. There's dull metal and metal steel, both of which are actually included in this, but if you only need the metal by itself without any of the paint or the decals or whatever, you can use these guys. If you want to just have a decal on top, you can use this one, just dirt. This one is dust, so anything that is top facing will receive a bunch of dust. There's a rust, a painted metal with strokes in it, and then a bunch of test guys down here. So you got 25% gray, 50% gray, black, test clay, which is a real simple thing with just a little bit of noise, a mapping test, a mirror test, and then also a pure white. And then this is the hard surface 1 pack, which is a pay pack, which I'm selling for $9 on $9.99 on the website. And it includes concrete, which actually has I think 3 or 4 different concretes as part of the pack. This is just one of them. A glazed pottery, a light bulb material, rubber material. Then there's 3 glasses, clear, frosted, and tinted. Each of these glasses, by the way, it's not just glass. It also has, if you look closely when you render it, you'll see there's scratches and scuff marks and that kind of thing. I've tried to make sure that all these aren't, just generic materials. They have a little bit of weathering, a little bit of dirt, a little bit of bump on them to try to make them look more realistic. Then I have some metals. I have the brass. Like, for example, down here you can see there are worn parts down here in the occluded areas. Then this is non-worn brass up top. Bronze, which is very similar to the ZBrush bronze shader that everyone used, where it will place sort of a greenish patina around the edges of the surface. There's an anisotropic metal, which has brushed metal with scratches in a specific direction. The isotropic one is similar, except instead of the scratches going all together, they're all over the place, which just kind of creates a blurry metal. Cast iron for pots and that kind of thing. A copper and a metal mesh, and then 2 paints, one which is a bumpy paint and the other is a smooth paint. And to note, if you want to use the simple materials like those test materials, it basically requires no plugins, but for a lot of these materials you're going to need a few plugins. I recommend you'll need the color correct plugin from Unite, the warp texture plugin, the camera map Gemini plugin, and all these materials here are V-Ray specific. So like these test ones here can be used in any renderer, but these guys here are all done specifically for V-Ray. And then under usage, most of these do not require any UVs. I'm a big fan of not using UVs on hard surface stuff if I can avoid it. So instead there's a little process you have to go through. It's a 5-step process where you take all the objects you're going to apply the materials to, you reset their X form. You then apply a blended box map, which you do using the soulburn script blended box map maker. You then do a blended cube projection using the soulburn script blended cube projection maker. You bake curvature into the surface, and then you apply a material modifier. And you can read through this. This is all on my website, which gives you more details on exactly how to do each one of these things. But once you do just these steps, you can do those, it'll take 2 minutes to do on all your objects. Say you have 10,000 objects, just run these 5 steps, and then all these materials will look pretty much good right off the bat. And you can go in and, of course, modify them and add more detail and do whichever you need to do. But the goal is I don't want you guys to have to spend a lot of time setting up lots of UVs on things and then apply the materials. I want to be able to apply the materials and get an 80%, 90%, good looking thing right off the bat. And so that's the whole point of these particular materials. So just make sure you set up your stuff using the stuff under usage here. Also to note, all the samples I've set to 8 in the material, which for certain things like the frosted glass might make them look a little noisy. And so just once you've gotten something that looks generally good, just go in and change the subdiv value to 16 or 32 or something higher to get a much more detailed surface. Now the model section is what it does is it merges in these various models from the various files that you have in your directories. So for example, I have an object, oh, I need to know what a 6-foot tall man looks like. Well, you click the 6-foot tall man icon and now bam, he's in your scene. So if you're building something and it turns out that your scale is really off, or you want to know what your scale is, that's a real simple way to make sure that your scale is on. Note the 6-foot tall man specifically only works if you're using 1 unit equals 1 centimeters. Otherwise, he'll be a different size. But you can customize that and change the size of him and resave the file for your own scenes if you happen to use a different size for things. So you can use this to bring in all sorts of things. For example, a sub-D box. So this is just a box that has edges set up so that when you turbo smooth it, it is properly subdivided, giving you that nice edge. And I have a bunch of primitives down here which are all given away for free, which are various primitives ready for subdivision. And then, you know, a few more, like this is a monolith for material tests and that sort of thing. And another cool feature about models, there's a few placement features when it comes to this. If you're going to be, you know, placing stuff in your scene, really this brings it into your scene, and then you could use other tools. Like for example, I have my object painter script that lets you paint objects onto other objects. But it does have a few tools that let you place stuff. So for example, let's say you have your guy here, and you move it over to some other location, and you've changed it, modified it. And then you want to have another object at the same spot. Under options here, there's align model to current selection. And if you turn that on, when you bring in your next model, instead of the model appearing back at the origin, it appears wherever your currently selected model is. So that can let you make more complex things a lot quicker by having everything snap to wherever you currently are in your scene, rather than constantly having to go back to the origin and pulling it, you know, back and forth. But for more complex models that you're bringing forth, it's usually a good idea to turn this off, which is why it's off by default. Like, let's say you have a file that contains 100 different pipes in it. You don't want all 100 different pipes to merge into the scene and show up directly to wherever you have selected. You want those to remain somewhere more neutral, like the origin. But if you're bringing in single objects like this, it's really great to turn that on and build your stuff that way. So discussing just a few more options down here in the options area, as well as specific options to the 3 different things you can load, and the options I showed you before for setting up the directories. There's also icon size and icons across. So right now the icons are 50 units across, and if you change that, like let's say we go to 25, it'll take a second here, and the reason it's taking a second, it says updating down at the bottom, is because it's regenerating all those icons to be a smaller size, and so now you have much smaller icons. And then icons across defines how wide this thing gets. So right now it's 16 across, so if I change this to something much smaller, like 5, I now have a much more compact UI. So once you get used to what sort of assets you have in here, it's probably better to make them smaller and fewer across, and then you can it takes up less room in your model. Or the other option is if you have a second monitor, like I do, I then pull this over to my second monitor and use it there. But you can change these to anything you want. So you know, you can make supersized icons if you want, really large ones. Again, it'll take a second to update as it renders out the new ones. But yeah, you know, you can customize it to do whatever is appropriate for your particular scene. But the defaults here is it's 50 and 16 across. So customizing SAL with your own assets is actually pretty straightforward. Let's say you don't use V-Ray and you use MentalRay instead, or you just want to add your own models in here or whatnot. At some point I'll set up a wizard where you just sort of select your objects, hit go, and it'll add it to the interface automatically. But until then, it's actually pretty easy to do it manually. So the way you do it is, like, let's say for example you want to add a model. You select any model in your scene, and you then hit save as, or sorry, save selected, and save that max file to your models directory. So for example, let's say I save example.max into the models directory, and then I create an icon that's named the same. So it would be example.png, and that icon can be a rendered image or a painted image or whatever you'd like. And then when you go back to Max and you restart SAL, that asset that you saved is now available in the models directory. And in this case, I didn't make an icon, and if it doesn't have an icon, it'll actually just use this generic icon for things. But again, if you save out your own icon, like say an 800 by 800 pixel image, it will then resize it to whatever the sizes it needs to add it to your icons here. And so now, if you click the button, it loads the asset. And the same is for the environments. The environments here are basically just a series of lights. So both light to actually apply light to your surface, but then also the backgrounds are in fact just a bitmap which is assigned to V-Ray dome lights. So you take those lights and you save selected, give them an icon, and restart SAL, and they show up right in here just like anything else. Materials are a little different, but it's pretty close. And that is, you need to create a dummy object, say like a teapot, assign a material to it, the material you want. Then you take that teapot, do save selected, save it to the directory, and then same way it'll show up here. And then when you click that, it'll take whatever material you assign to your dummy object, and it'll apply that material to the current current objects that are in your scene. So it doesn't really matter what the material, what the object is in the file, as long as it has the material assigned. It'll grab that material and then apply it in the correct way. One other note: if you want these things to show up in categories, what you need to do is you need to rename the file and give it a category at the front. So, for example, if you give it the name people underscore example, then it'll show up in the people category. Like you can see here in people, it says people underscore and then the name of the file. And that's how you use the category system inside of SAL, where you can then limit it by, say, glass. So these 3dsmax files are all called glass underscore clear, glass underscore frosted, and glass underscore tinted. And so that's either you can just name it anything like here, or you can name it something specific here so that it shows up only in a subcategory. So anyway, hopefully this tool looks useful to you. Thank you for watching this long lesson in how to use it, but hopefully this gives you all the information you need. And I hope that you do some cool stuff with it. And if you do, feel free to give me a scream. Either contact me on my website, neilblevins.com, or write on the YouTube channel, or come to my my Facebook or my Twitter and let me know that you've used one of these materials or one of these assets. You can basically use them for any purpose. So if you want to use any of the materials for any commercial purpose, that's totally fine. A mention is appreciated but not necessary. The only thing I ask is please don't take these materials or light rigs and repackage them and then sell them or give them away for free on your own site or something like that. But otherwise, you're free to use them in any way you want, and you're free to use SAL any way you want. Also, feel free to contact me if you have any suggestions or wish list items for SAL, and I'll add it to the wish list. And at some point, I'll get some. I have a bunch of ideas already and some new things I want to add, but I'm always cool hearing other ideas you guys might have. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.